How you doing, everybody? Thanks for inviting me here. And I was a Jehovah's Witness for 40 years. I was born and raised in the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was born in 1959. I left when I was 40. And, you know, when I left, I really left it behind. I was done. I was like, I'm done with the witnesses. My family disowned me. And I thought, I'll find a new family. Sorry, that's so hard. Anyway, I left. I said, you know, I'm going to find me a new family. So, you know, I was done with the witnesses, and I'll go back over how I got out. You know, I got out in the with a generation prophecy. I was in the prophecy that said 70 or 80 years from 1914, the end would come. And I wasn't really in the truth heavily when I was young. I was born into it. And anyway, long story short, I progressed up to the age 17, 18. And my dad said, you're an adult now, you're on your own. So anyway, I started to drink. I started to party. I moved away from the faith. And then I got married outside the faith. I got married to a worldly girl. She was a Catholic. And then a year later, I was divorced. And anyway, so I did like what most witnesses do, I guess. I shouldn't say most, but me, I ran back to the organization. And I said, that's what I get for leaving Jehovah's organization. And so I wasn't baptized yet, so I went back and I got really serious. I got serious about studying. I started studying everything. I hooked up with an elder. I got baptized. I became a ministerial servant. I got remarried, and life was really good. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, you know, I was celebrating. The end was coming any day. I was in that generation prophecy, 70 or 80 years, so we were real close. We were in the early 80s, mid 80s. The Watchtower, we were reading Revelation over and over and over and over and over, the Revelation book. And I thought, it's almost over. And I could remember my dad saying, in 75, it'll be all over. The reason I'm sad about 75 is my dad was very disappointed at the end of 75. It went by, and the brothers didn't give a damn. You know, they didn't care. And when a bunch of people left in 75, the organization said Jehovah's cleaning out its organization. And I didn't really think much about that. I just was in the back of my mind, what happened in 75? But I was in the generation prophecy. I was in the 70 or 80 years from 1914. And I was taking this stuff serious. I really was. I was reading all the scriptures. This generation will by no means pass away till all these things occur. And I mean, I was in it. Likewise, when you see the fig tree change and these things appear, likewise, you'll know when the end is near. And it all seemed true. And anyway, that date started to creep up, and as we know, the watchtower started to change. The watchtower started to say, the generation isn't a generation as we know it. And I had a crisis of conscience. I was like, wait a minute. They told my dad, 75, it would be all over. I never thought I would drive. I never thought I would graduate. I didn't care if I graduated. I didn't study. I graduated with a D-. I was one of the ones who thought my life was wasted. And now that I'm past it, now that I'm, outside of the organization, I've been out now for 20 years. And I want to tell you why I went back to help out. Because when I left that organization, those men were nasty. Those men were horrible. There was no love of Christ in them. And the reason I went back was because my dad died of shame. My dad died. He said, I failed to raise you kids in the mental regulating of Jehovah. I saw my brothers just a couple years back, and I had moved on. My life turned out different, than I thought. I started writing books. I started prospering. I started businesses. I started doing all sorts of wonderful things. I married my wonderful wife. But I stopped by to see my brothers back in Michigan, and they were so screwed up. My oldest brother's a presiding overseer. My younger brother was an elder, and he was kind of in a halfway house. And he kept saying, Jehovah's going to kill you. Jehovah's going to kill you. Because you've gotten out, because you've talked about the witnesses. Jehovah's going to kill you. And I was like, wow. It looked like a bomb had went off in my family. My brother's freaking crazy. My brother, Doug, I go to see him. I'm going through Missouri. Hey, Doug, I want to see you. Okay, he's talking real slow, like he's mentally ill. Like, hey, Doug, I want to see you. I'm coming through Missouri. Okay, Danny. You're the presiding overseer in your congregation, and you're nuts? Anyway, he finally showed up about 2 hours later. And he looked nuts. He wouldn't even look at me. He's looking down. I'm like, Doug, I'm here. Doug. Danny? Doug, I'm here. He finally looked up. There was no connection. There was a disconnect. And so anyway, what I'm sad about is in my family, my dad didn't get to use his gifts. My mother didn't get to use her gifts. My mother was a schizophrenic. My dad took care of her. My dad died of shame in that organization. My dad got programmed, and he never got out. My brothers, our programs. And so I thought to myself, how the hell did I get out? What was the key for me? And I'm going to tell you what the key was, and for my wife. It was the love of Christ. Amen. It wasn't a religion. I got out. I went to 200 churches. I didn't want one thing to do with a church. I didn't want to have one thing to do with Jesus. I didn't want your program. When I went into a church, the last thing I wanted was your program. You know what I wanted? Your love. Not your religion. And so I got into science of mind. I got into unity. Got some love in there. I felt some love in there. Studied all the classes. I went there a long time. I studied occult literature. I studied esoteric literature. I became a Mason. I went through all levels of Masonry. Turning over rocks, 32nd degree Mason, Knight Templar. What I found was the only thing that meant anything was love. Honest to God. Jesus said, if you've seen him, you've seen the Father. God is love. So, anyway, I just want to go back to my family. So I come back from Missouri, and I saw flesh, my dad, my brothers, ruined by a program. The program was innocently indoctrinated to them, meaning you open the Bible, and it says, did you know God's name is Jehovah? That man may know that God, whose name is Jehovah, is the most high over all the earth. I didn't know that. Did you know Jehovah wasn't a Trinity? Jesus sits at the right hand of God. He comes from the Father. Can't tell me he's a Trinity. So anyway, the thought I was making was we were innocently indoctrinated. Innocently. And so as I got out, I started visiting churches. And I went into the Mormon church. And they said, let me show you our dogma. Covenants and doctrines. God didn't leave us without a prophet. Blah, blah, blah. All within these few little scriptures. That's our whole religion. Then I said, well, wow. And there was the Jehovah's Witness right there. Their religion. God's name, no Trinity. Mormons, covenants and doctrines. What about the Messianic? Oh, here's our doctrine, the first 5 books of the Bible. Anything after that, we don't know. New Testament, we don't know. In fact, you Christians are stupid for believing the New Testament, because everything's in the Torah. So it was interesting because the question I asked myself, if a religion don't have love, what is it? It's a cult. Jesus said they'll know me by my fruit. Love is the language of the true church. That's the true church. And when I went out, I was looking for that church. I was looking for that truth. I went to, I don't know how many churches. Like I said, I went to 200 churches. I was looking everywhere for that absolute truth, and I seemed like I always found something wrong. But I also found something else. I found some really good people in every church, even in the witnesses. I found some beautiful people who I felt like were really connected. And I found that in the Mormons. And I found that in Christianity. And I found that in the Catholic. And I was like, wow. So what am I looking for, I thought. There's good people in there. There's this in there. There's dogma in there. There's all this stuff. And so anyway, what I realized that the ingredient, that the truth is that without love, if a building doesn't have love, we were in a church last week, and it was for Easter, and we were a guest, and not one person came up and said hi on Easter. Not one person, not one, I swear not one. Was Jesus in there? Anyway, Jesus said you'd know them by their fruit. And so anyway, I was in the witnesses. I left. I filled out my paper and left. Where you put in your letter. And forget what I was going to say. But anyway, I don't know if I have much more to say, other than if Christ truly dwells in this temple, we're the church. We are the church. If Christ dwells in here. And if we have love, and I had to say, I made this choice a long time ago. I was in that schizophrenia in the church where I was trying to figure out if God was love or he was angry and he was crazy. I read Old Testament. God seemed like he was insane. You seemed like you couldn't trust him. You seemed like he pulled the rug out from under you. And I choose to believe now that God is love. I wondered. I thought, man, this God kills everybody? He's waiting to genocide everybody? Jesus is waiting to genocide everybody? I don't know if that's the theme in regular Christianity, but when I was in the witnesses, Jehovah was going to send Jesus to execute everybody with a sword. Anybody who didn't know his name. I saw that God, Jehovah, like Hitler. If you didn't salute Hitler when he went by, he put a bullet right through your head. And they were telling me that Jehovah was like that. That if you don't know Jehovah's name, he who calls on the name of Jehovah will be saved. So if you didn't know Jehovah's name, he was going to execute you. He was going to genocide you, or worse yet, his son. Well, like father, like son. His father's going to genocide you. He's coming down on a horse with a big-ass sword, and he's going to whack your heads off till the blood runs up to the necks. That's what we were taught as witnesses. I could not serve a God like that. There is no way. So I left, and I came to the conclusion that Jesus was telling us something totally different than the organization told me. He said God was love. He said God was 77 times 7. He said my Father's like this, like the prodigal son. That God allows for you to go on your journey and go the other way, and he still loved them. We were told in the kingdom hall, you went out and you was the prodigal son, you'd like to never get back. Like they say, you'd have to sit in the back of the kingdom hall for a year, and then they would tell you, you're not worthy enough and make you wait maybe another year. But what was I going to say? About that. But anyway, what I was trying to say was Jesus was not describing that kind of a God. He was not describing a murderous God. So, I love that prodigal son story. I love that story. And it's not because the kid came home and became a Christian. It's because God loved him on his way out. God made room for him to go the other way. And we judge everybody out there. They're not a Christian. They're not like us. But God allowed for that journey away. That person out there is our brother. And that's the biggest surprise, because I said, Lord, what is it about this prodigal son story? There's more to this story than a kid returning home and becoming a Christian. What is this story? Well, God allowed him to go out. That's part of the story. So guess what? I have got to play all three roles of that story. I got to be the prodigal son who stayed home and was self-righteous and was wishing genocide on everyone who wasn't like me. That was me. That's the first phase. And then I had to work through addiction. When I got out of the Jehovah's Witnesses, then I had to work through sex addiction and alcoholism. And I don't know so much if it was sex addiction, because I was just restrained. I was told if I even looked at a girl I'd already committed adultery. You know what I mean? I was destined to fail. And so, anyway, what happened was, I got desperately lonesome. I left the Kingdom Hall. My wife left me. I got desperately lonely. I started drinking. I didn't have the confidence to say hi to a girl and talk to a girl. So I got a prostitute. And it felt good. I got intimacy. I got closeness, whether it was right or not. But God allowed for it, and he allowed for that in the prodigal son. Anyway, it came to its end. It came to its end. My addiction came to its end after I had the prostitutes and after I was getting drunk. When it finally came to an end, I realized I was looking for love. I wasn't looking for a girl in a short skirt and all of this stuff. I thought I was. I thought that's what I wanted. But when I came to the end of myself, that was the end of my addiction. I was like, I'm done. I'm looking for love. Because I had a girl. She says, oh, let's just have sex and have fun, and then I'm going to leave. I'm like, you don't like me? You just want to have sex and leave? Yeah. And if you get serious with me, we won't be together. The beautiful thing about it was, guys, I got to play the role of the prodigal son that went away. And I also got to play the role of the one who stayed home. Why is there more rejoicing over the one who left than the 99 who never left? You know why? Because the one who went out and came to the end of himself knows about being born again. He knows about coming to the end of himself. He knows about power greater than himself. He knows about the man who goes out and is sexually addicted. And he says, I understand. I've been there. I love you, despite you. The man who returns back home to the Father is now able to play that role of the Father. The one who stayed home, I don't know what all this junk is out in the world. I'll be glad when it's gone. Then you go down the road. Now you know about the one who went down the road. Now you can have empathy. You're not a church guy judging them, saying you're dirty, filthy, but you understand. Understanding is what you have once you've been here. So for whatever the reason, the Lord let me play all three roles. And now, I can love that man on his way out. See, the witnesses didn't love you on the way out. They booted you out and you were gone. When you went out down that road, you were gone. And they don't want you back. And I'm going to tell you that right now. The witnesses do not want you back. Because you know why? When you've been down this road and you hit the end of yourself and you come back to a Kingdom Hall, there is no reason for any more abuse. There is no more reason for abuse. When you've been down this road and you come back, you should be embraced. Your Father should be running to you. Not putting you in the back of a Kingdom Hall. You've already been beat up. You've already had cause and effect. You've already come to the end of scoffing, cynical faces that you're dirty and filthy. That's not Jesus' message. And I think it's interesting that God allows for the journey away. God could have stopped the fall in the beginning. The fall in the beginning when Satan was coming in. Think about that. I'll use Jehovah. There's Satan crawling down the vine. Don't you do that, Satan. No, no, no. Eve, don't you do that, Eve. Don't eat the... Adam, don't... God allowed it. Why did God allow it? Why did God allow us to go on? Why did it go on? God could have stopped it right there. I've thought about this, guys. If you had a corporation that you just set up that was beautiful, Ford Motor Company, and you have union stewards outside, and they're going to go in and pollute the people's brains, tell them they're not being paid enough, tell them you're getting cheated, and they're going to destroy your corporation. What would you do if one got inside? I know what you do. You'd send the police in, you go in, and you tackle him, and you get him out as fast as you can. Because you wouldn't want him corrupting the minds of the people within the organization. God did not do that. God allowed the fall to fall. I don't know why. Here's what I think. He wanted us to live in separation. He's that loving. Go out there. Yes, you want to be like God? Go. Go be like God. Go do your thing. So I did. And then I realized I needed God. For whatever reason, I didn't have the components. But I had to find that out the hard way. So I lived in my addictions. I lived in alcoholism. I lived in anger. I lived a violent life. Violent. I've had murderous thoughts in me. I'm murdering people. So angry at the witnesses when I got out. And God allowed for that. And what I want to say is he's making me all new. Because here's the thing. God's got to let us come to the end of ourselves. And how else do we come to know God? I've got to try it all my own way. I've got to do my own thing. I've got to be who I want to be and try to make it all happen. And God says, okay, I love you, go. And so, what I know about this up here, this master key that opens every door, is that love is that key. Unconditional love is that key. And it's the unconditional love, whether a person's coming and coming, you love them right where they're at. Where you are, if the love of Christ is in you, and you guys have all heard this, if the love of Christ is in you, where you are, God is. Where you stand is holy ground. And what I know is this. The Holy Spirit, I believe, once I'm done with me, once I'm done with being who I think I am, I was told I was a sinner. I was told that I was no good. I was told that Jehovah was going to destroy me. But I realized, and this sounds crazy, guys, but the Lord wants my mind. The Lord wants my heart. The Lord wants my hands. The Lord wants to possess me. And he can only do that when we're done with ourselves. I'm sorry. And so for me, I had to come to me. I had to live out that prodigal son journey. I had to go away and do all the bad stuff. I had to drink myself into oblivion. I had to be with the prostitutes. I had to do all the things that I thought I needed to do. And after that, when I was about homeless, when I was down in Aurora, Colorado, after my escort girlfriend left, who was on crack. I didn't know she was on crack when I first met her, but she left. And anyway, everything crashed. I mean, you know, I lost my home, I lost my cars, I lost perfect credit, I lost everything. And I broke into my house that was foreclosed. They had a big chain around my door. Anyway, I crawled in through the window, and the water was turned off. Everything was shut down. It was full of flies. It was full of bugs. And I started reflecting. I said, my God, can I do a lot of damage quick? This was after the Kingdom Hall. This was after I came out. I wanted to say this, that after I came out, I had a lot more stupid stuff to do. Maybe it was the programming from the hall, I don't know. But I had a lot more stuff to do. I was going to date those wild women I only looked at. I was going to do all sorts of stupid stuff. But anyway, I lost everything. Really, really wiped me out. Financially, I didn't even have a vehicle. I had one vehicle. And actually, I had a vehicle, and the tranny locked up, and it was a nice convertible car, and I just left it on the side of the road. I just said, I'm done. God, take it. And then I went home and broke into my foreclosed home. And I was laying on the bed, and the flies were bugging around. And right then is when I surrendered. People always say, what's your testimony? What's your testimony? When did you give your life to Jesus? I didn't. But I surrendered. And I was born again just the same. I don't think God's partial. See, that was a witness thing. You know, you got to say, I give my life to Jehovah. I got to give my life to Jesus. But the truth is, God knows our heart. He knows when we surrender. And so I was laying there in the house, and I said, God, help me. That's all I said, 3 words. God, help me. And you know what I loved about that? It wasn't a religion. I can't stand religion. I don't know why. You know what I mean? I do not like religion. And anyway, right then is where I met God. Right there is where I met God. Right there is where I met power greater than myself. That is the day that I was impregnated with something. I don't know what. Holy Spirit, Christ, Jesus, I don't know. But what I know, I was impregnated with something, and everything began to change. Everything began to change. Slowly, everything started to come back. Houses, cars, businesses. My wife, I was looking in all the wrong places for my wife, and I said, I give up. I give up. I'm not looking for her anymore. I said, Lord, you know where she's at. I don't. And long story short, I met her the next day in a car dealership. And it was the most beautiful thing. It was like love at first sight. But God arranged that because she came out of a cult, worse one than I was in. She came out of some crazy cult, a channeling cult, where they're channeling Jesus, and different things, And it almost killed her. And I was able to validate her and talk to her, and we became friends, and we dated for a year. But you know what, guys? It's like that brother said back there, Rodney, I believe. Most of us are up on a shelf. Most of me was up on a shelf. I never thought I was going to be an author and a writer and all this stuff, make money, be loving. I never thought I was going to be any of that. And when I was impregnated with that something, I think I got what Paul was talking about. Oh, how I labor till Christ be formed in you. It's a real entity that wants to possess us. It really is an entity. And it's not necessarily religion. Because I really believe that everyone becomes a church, that their temple becomes filled with the Spirit of God. And where you go, God is. And people are waiting to see that Jesus. I'm telling you, if you're preaching to Jehovah's Witnesses, don't show up and tell them to believe in Jesus. Show up with Christ within this right here. Show up as unconditional love. Despite them, anybody in the world, these are all the prodigal sons out here. All these people in the world are the prodigal son that have went away from home. Show up as love, because I'm telling you, that is not only the door to every cult. It's the key to every heart. I'm telling you. Jesus said, love them. Love your neighbor as yourself. And so many times we go out to preach about the name Jesus, the name Jehovah, the name Buddha, the name whatever. And we don't show them that love. Jesus said they will know you by your love. He said you'll know them by the fruit. And you know what? I know there are a lot of good churches. I know there are a lot of good pastors. But I'm telling you, if we show up as love, love can move a mountain. And you know something? When you show up as love, you're speaking to that person's soul. And I'm going to tell you something. My mind that was so made up in Jehovah's Witness ideology totally collapsed when I met a lady who showed me unconditional love. I don't know why she was showing me love. She says, you're Jehovah's Witness, aren't you? The lady I was doing some work for. I said, yeah, how'd you know? She said, well, you're all goofy. You're all kind of the same. I said, thanks. But what was interesting was she loved me for some crazy reason. Now think about that. She loved me for some crazy reason. And I said, what religion are you? She says, well, I know how you Jehovah's Witnesses are. Once I tell you what religion I am, you tear me to pieces. Oh, you're one of those. You're Baptist. You're Christian, And so this lady, everywhere I went, she was. Everywhere I went, the lady put up a notepad and a piece of paper and said, what would you like to talk about today? Isn't that weird? Everywhere I went. Hi, Marcia. What are we talking about? Oh, what do you want to talk about today? Middle of the night. Can we talk? I'm here for you. Who is this lady? I ask her, who are you? She says, well, I'm just a follower of Christ. Okay. She told me, she says, I think you're sick. I said, what do you mean? She says, well, your tongue is coated. I think you might be sick. She says, you ought to go see this guy. So I didn't go see him, but I started feeling sicker. And I went down and saw the guy, and he says, you're lucky you got in here. He says, I'm going to give you a bunch of colonics, because I breathe a lot of lacquer. He said, I'm going to give you a bunch of colonics. So I went in there, and I said, how much? How much are these colonics? And he says, well, you probably need 3 to 4 a week. They're about $75 a piece, and you probably need them for the next 3 months. And I was like, wow. You know what I mean? I said, okay, thanks. Because I was never going back. I couldn't afford one at the time, right? And I asked the guy, I said, okay. And I said, all right. I said, well, I'll try to make them. And anyway, long story short, the guy told me that all of them were paid off by that lady. Do you know what I mean? The love of Christ. All I want to say is this, and I'll just close it at this, is love, and love is a language. Love is the language. To every door, love is the language. Jesus said, God said, go love your neighbor as yourself. Who's our neighbor? Our brothers in the church. You know what I mean? How many times do you see it? I have to say, when I went traveling to the different churches, all I saw was people who cared about those in the church. They didn't care about nobody. Do you want to be in our tribe? We believe in Jesus. You believe in Jesus, you can be in our tribe. What tribe? tribe of intellectualism, tribe of religiosity. Love is a language of its own. Love is the language of the true church. Love is the only church. If the church don't have love, it's a cult. It's no more than mind. It's no more, it's I'm right and you're wrong. I have it and you don't. Jesus said they'll know him by the fruit we have. Because you know why? Because love is not of this world. Joy is not of this world. So if we're able to love the unlovable, love the sinner, love the prodigal son on his way out, love him on his return, doesn't matter. It's just journeys. Everybody's in different places. If we only love those in our church, we have not arrived yet. We have not arrived yet. Love is the language of the church. If that reigns in us, if Christ truly reigns in us, the Spirit of truth, if the truth reigns in our temple, we will show up as love wherever we go. It won't be about religion. If you want them to see Christ, if you want to open that door, show up as love. Angela had a situation where she got out of a cult, and that's why I want to just say that key that got me out was unconditional love. And that same key got my wife out. That same key. Somebody loved her unconditionally. Could you say what it was, Angela? Would you mind? Is that okay, Charles, if she just said real quick what happened? But I'm just talking experientially. So just tell them what happened with the...
I was married to another man for 24 years, but before that, I was kind of a Jehovah's Witness. Jewish Worldwide Church of God was the name of the church. And my husband said, I'll give up everything I believe, Christmas, Easter, all the holidays, birthdays, everything for you. And we studied at my church, the whole thing. And then when we got married, he right away reneged. And so I'm being forced as a dutiful wife to go to the Christmas with him and all that. Well, I was not happy about it. And I was obedient kind of a person, submissive, but I was angry inside, really angry. And I just kind of ruined their Christmas. And then the next year came around again, and I went again, more angry than I was the year before. And again, I ruined their Christmas again, 2 times now. And his mother says to me, Angela, come in the bathroom, honey. And so I went in the bathroom, and she opened the cabinet, took down a bottle of Charlie perfume, and gave it to me. She goes, oh, no, it's not a Christmas gift. I just want you to know I love you, and I'm so glad you're in our family. And I'm like, what? This doesn't make sense. I ruined their Christmas 2 years in a row. And I know it, and you love me. Why? And I'm like, what is this? And all of a sudden, something inside of me said, this is the love of God. And I'm like, yes, that's what this is. Whoa, I've never seen such a thing in all my life. And I realized that, wait, God, why are you in an Episcopalian woman? What are you doing in... And but that's what the truth was. And so anyway, it touched me deeply. And the truth is, I just tucked that one away in my heart. I didn't tell my husband about it. I just tucked it away in my heart. And that was the beginning of the domino effect of things that began to unravel, that God used isolation and all kinds of other things to get me to where I needed to be until Billy Graham Crusade came to Denver. And then there was another amazing thing that happened where he spoke to me. But love was the key. And same with everything that happened after too, because my mom doesn't have that ability in the church that I was raised in. As you know, Jehovah's Witness, there isn't that key. So anyway, it was the key for me. So thank you.
Thank you. So anyway, I know love is the key now, and I know that is a language of its own. And I was blessed early on. I don't know if I mentioned it, but when I was getting married, I told my mother-in-law, or Angela told her mother-in-law, I was getting married. And when she told them, they just turned around, facing the other direction. And I said, why are they turning around? And he said, because you don't keep the Sabbath and you eat seafood. Really, it was a true, and they were serious, man. I mean, they had the tassels on and Jewish something on them, and, they had all the gear. And anyway, but, that was a blessing for me, because right then I saw it wasn't just Jehovah's Witnesses. I started to go and visit all these churches, trying to find that one, and it was always turning up the same. Some loved, some didn't love. So anyway, that was the conclusion of the matter, that if we'll allow that love to permeate us and surrender. I wrote a book called Surrender, The Key to the Kingdom Within. When I surrendered, something filled me. Something bigger than me filled me. And I wasn't the same person. And so I wrote Surrender, The Key to the Kingdom Within. I also wrote I Witnessed the Shocking Insider Story. That was my first one. That's when I realized the first book was I Witnessed the Shocking Insider Story of Jehovah's Witnesses, which said God wasn't a religion. That was the summation of that book. God is not a religion. The second book was when I surrendered myself, that this power came upon me and my whole life changed. Everything changed real fast. I mean, real fast. So I wrote Surrender. It's the key to the kingdom within. And then the third book I wrote was called The Divine Order of Alchemy, the ancient secret to union with God. And basically what it was an overview of the tabernacle in the wilderness. The tabernacle in the wilderness had all these different stations in it. The first station was an altar where they put the lamb or whatever they were putting on there to sacrifice to Jehovah, right? So what I did was replaced the lamb with me. That we lie ourselves on the altar to be altered, right? Say, to thee, O Lord, I give you myself. The smoke represented the stench that was burning off me. The second station was the laver, where I was washing the laver. What was the laver? It was prayer and meditation. So as I washed the laver, they say the laver was full of mirrors. It would reflect back imperfections and different things. And a reflection is very kindly, like they say when Jesus is trying to talk to you. It says like a drop of dew on a blade of grass. Will he make a suggestion? So I thought that in the mirror. Then we move into selfless service, which is another stage, which is the showbread, the sifting. We move into selfless service. Then the lights come on. And then we move into the most holies within this temple, seeing God face to face. I and the Father are one. And what's interesting today and what nobody talks about is God, Jesus, whoever, they want that union. Jesus says, I am in union with the Father and he's in union with, as I am in union with the Father and he's in union with me, that you would come in union with us. Is that the Godhead? Do you know what I mean? They're calling us into union. When I return home, everything I have is yours. We're being called into oneness with Christ, grafted in. Grafted in. That's the big message. That's the big message. And that's the message that regretfully I don't hear the churches talking about. The churches don't talk about union. The churches don't talk about grafting in. I heard some of it today. But in most places that I've been, there's somebody between me and God. All sorts of things. But they want a one-on-one relationship. So anyway, that's all I want to say today. And I just want to say love is the real church. And if we'll allow it, it'll fill us. And that's what we want to take into the world. And then we'll be able to say like Jesus did, hopefully, all of us, if you see me, you've seen the Father. That's the highest calling. All of us have been called to that. Imagine that. If you see me, you've seen the Father. Jesus said the things that I do and greater you would do. You know what happens when you say that in a church? Their eyes start battering, and they run the other way. So anyway, that's all I want to say. My time's up. You guys, thank you. All right.